Right.
I'll go figure it out. I'll go share it.
But also, if you don't want to share it like right now, you can go back to the council's page and share it anytime too, and then it'll just share. But it does it does alert people that it's live if they want to participate in the live comments, because Lindsay is online here from the council, and she will be managing the comments in the chat box in Facebook. We've got this down. We've been
Yeah. This is our 4th forum in this series. This is our halfway mark. We've been going for a month now. Moving into month 2.
I will have to tell you about my dream though, Sarah, later, because I had a dream that I just was not able to get on today. Like I just
we would have figured it out.
I was supposed to do the intros, and I couldn't do the intros, and everybody was waiting, but we were in a live room with a live audience, and we were trying to do it live online, and it was just whatever.
All right, we're gonna go live here. Do you mind, Sarah, admitting all the people in there? All right, we're gonna go live in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Facebook. Hi, everybody that's joining Zoom. Welcome. We're going to give folks a chance to get into the Zoom room. And thanks to those of you that registered. Thanks for those of you that are joining us on Facebook Live. We hope you'll share this stream, tell your friends about what's going on in this conversation on voting your values. And welcome. Yes, as folks arrive, I want to say hello to everybody and welcome folks. Great. So welcome to the 4th event in our Voting Our Values Forum series. My name is Susannah Tuttle, Director of NCIPL, the Creation Care and Climate Justice Program of the North Carolina Council of Churches. And it's my honor to welcome you today. Today we are talking about voting on the values of love and justice for our immigrant neighbors. And we are so grateful to have truly wonderful speakers with us to help lead in this conversation. You will hear from them shortly, and I know it's going to be a wonderful discussion. Thanks to our speakers for being here. I also want to thank our partners at Vote Earth for supporting this entire forum series. Please do check out the Vote Earth website. They are doing wonderful get out the vote work, particularly on college campuses, which we know is so important at this important election. So that you have a bit of an idea how today will go, first we will talk a bit with our speakers about their work and how justice and compassion for immigrants is on the ballot this election cycle. Then we will offer some resources for voter education to ensure that all of you attending feel prepared to educate your own communities about this election. We will have a Q&A session, an opportunity for you to ask questions of our speakers so that you can learn more and dive a little deeper with them. As you have questions, please go ahead and place them in the chat, whether you're on Zoom or Facebook, and we will flag them for the Q&A. Also, please go ahead and say hello in the chat. We would love to know where you're calling in from, the name of your congregation or organization, and anywhere else you'd like to share with us. Lastly, this forum, in addition to our entire Voting Our Values series, was inspired by the Democracy, Values, and the 2020 Election Voter Guide, published by Faith in Public Life in partnership with Interfaith Power and Light. This guide was created with communities in mind, and the North Carolina Council of Churches is the only group distributing it across the state of North Carolina. So please, we want you to ask all of you attending today to download the guide and encourage your congregation and community members to do the same. We're placing the guide and the link in the chat at this point, so please share the guide and spread the news of how important it is to vote your values. This link to do is helping us communicate while voting our values matters this election cycle and every election cycle. So thanks again for helping us to circulate this important message. And now, without further ado, I'll pass the mic to Sarah Ogletree, NCIPL Program Director, to introduce our speakers and begin our conversation.
Thank you, Susannah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here for the 4th event in our series. We have been doing this for a month now, and I'm so grateful to be having these conversations. I've been learning a lot about this election, about the values that we're voting on this election, and I hope that you have been learning a lot as well. I know that that's going to continue. The trend will continue today. So I want to introduce our incredible speakers who we have with us today. First, I'll introduce Isaac Villegas, a child of Latin American immigrants. Isaac grew up in the U.S.-Mexico borderlands in the southwest corner of this country. He is the pastor of Chapel Hill Mennonite Fellowship and serves on the governing board of the North Carolina Council of Churches. He is a columnist for the Christian Century and the Mennonite magazines, and we are so grateful that you're here, Isaac. Thank you for being here. We also have with us today Kokou Nayo, who goes by Nayo. Nayo is originally from Togo, West Africa, and he calls Durham home, as do most refugees and immigrants in North Carolina. He has a master's degree in community management and policy practice from UNC. Nayo has been an integral part of the Church World Service team for the past 6 years. His dedication to the refugee and immigrant cause started after his internship through UNC with Church World Service and continued as a volunteer and finally as the refugee community organizer. Since 2018, Nayo has focused on providing refugees with training, knowledge, and skills necessary to build bridges between refugee communities and the Triangle community as a whole through refugee leadership and advocacy. Thank you for being here, Nayo. We're so grateful that you're here. We also have with us today Ponkho Bermejo, who is the co-director of Beloved Asheville, Beloved Asheville. Ponkho weaves his Mexican culture into his work as a cultural artist and community organizer. He creates public art to support movement work and proudness for Black and Indigenous people of color. He has been working around the clock since the COVID-19 pandemic, responding and building a community leadership network in the hardest hit Latinx and African American neighborhoods. Thank you so much, Ponkho. And we have Reverend Amy Cantrell, who is the co-director of Beloved Asheville. Beloved's mission includes Street Medic Team, Tiny House Village, Rise Up Art and Music Studio, Neighborhood Fiesta Project, Kids Justice League, the first declared sanctuary in WNC, Elders Free farmers markets, and campaigns around housing, not handcuffs, anti-gentrification, policing alternatives, and the work to divest and invest in municipal budgets, and the removal of Confederate monuments.
I'm on a meeting.
Creating rapid response to ICE raids and supported work to end the 287G and stop harmful state legislation. She is a pastor in the Presbyterian Church. So as you can see, really wonderful speakers with us here today. I'm sorry I tripped over your bios a bit, but you all are doing such wonderful work. I want to start our conversation today with Isaac. And first, Isaac, my question is I'm wondering if you could speak to how your upbringing in and connection to the United States-Mexico borderlands has shaped your orientation to this work. So what does justice and compassion for immigrant communities mean to you, and how is this a moral issue?
Thank you, Sarah, for the invitation here. I'm glad to be here with all of you and see these lovely faces of other panelists. Can't wait to hear what they have to say as well. But yeah, no, your question, Sarah, about my own upbringing. So my parents were immigrants from Central and South America. Long time ago, I guess, like in the, what was that, probably 60s, 70s. which felt like a different era. You know, it was back when Democrats and Republicans agreed that immigrants were valuable members of this society. That used to be something that was a bipartisan commitment. And yeah, growing up as a kid in Los Angeles, and then later in Tucson, Arizona, I remembered that the hospitality, the welcome from those communities, finding a place there. I mean, the hospitality and the welcome didn't mean that everything was easy. It's not like the La Migra or the immigration police always left us alone, but there was a possibility for my parents to make a life for themselves and for me and my sister, which I'm grateful for. And when I think about immigration now and how this affects our values and our politics, I mean, that's what I want for others. That experience that my parents had, that I had growing up, where we were able to make a life for ourselves here. I want that for others to be able to live, to build community without fear of family separation, to live without the fear of the threat of deportation.
Absolutely, Isaac. It's so hard for me to imagine someone who is not an immigrant and is not the child of immigrants, the pain of being afraid of being deported. So thank you for that, reminding us, you know, this is what we should be hoping for all people, to be able to live a life not being afraid, and in which you feel safe in your own home, in the place where you belong. That is a wish that I certainly have for all people. The second question that I have, Isaac, relates to you being a minister. So you're a Mennonite minister. You also are on the governing board at the Council of Churches. And my question is, how can churches and church leaders become allies to the immigrant community? In your mind, what might it look like to embody a theology of welcome or radical hospitality in the United States? So sort of a two-part question. How can churches and church leaders become allies? And how can we embody this theology more broadly in the United States?
Yeah, no, good questions. Yeah, to the first part of that question, in terms of what to do in terms of congregational life, I mean, I think just kind of a very basic commitment. I mean, I shouldn't say basic, maybe for some people it requires a lot, I don't know. But just to embody a posture of listening, of learning. Because it is the case that immigrant communities have created communities of welcome and safety. You know, who keeps us safe? We keep us safe. So communities have been embodying hospitality for one another, creating sanctuary spaces, looking out for each other. So I think for people who haven't been connected to that work, I think maybe connecting with those communities and organizations that have been already doing that work and learning from them, learning what the needs might be, learning of what it might be to become a coworker in shifting our society, to become a place for all of us, like you were saying, Sarah, to live without fear, without the fear of threat of deportation, so that all of us can belong together as neighbors, to make a community that we all want to be a part of, so that all of us can build homes, to make a common life together. So I'd say that's the answer to the first question or the first part of that question, in terms of what congregations can do is to develop this posture of listening and learning and being called into the work of shifting our society to welcome all of us. In terms of the second part of radical change, I mean, I don't know. I don't know these days what the possibilities for radical change. I'm hopeful. I want them to happen. But maybe I would start with just kind of like a recommitment to the basics. It's just something about that we want to struggle together to love our neighbors. I mean, that be the foundation of all of our politics, of our daily lives, of this struggle together to love our neighbors. which means at the very basic level that we want to make sure that our neighbors aren't deported, and that that we make it possible for our neighbors to file for residency status. I mean, the immigration system is, the legal system is broken, is exclusionary. So what would it mean to make it actually possible for people to file paperwork for documentation, so that they can build their lives together? Yeah, so they can build their lives with us. I would say maybe like another part of that, just in terms of thinking about how maybe some very basic changes or sensibilities might be important for us to cultivate before we even like begin to talk about what radical change would be like. But just kind of like common sense recognition of the fact that immigrant households make our state what it is, make North Carolina what it is, our communities what they are. So just maybe an acknowledgement of having some kind of like fiscal sensibility or acknowledgement. I know some people say that they're committed to kind of fiscal conservatism. So just some of the basics that actually Rachel Baker was helpful in tracking down some of these stats for me. But just an acknowledgement that here in North Carolina, immigrant households pay $5 billion in federal taxes. So this is just North Carolina, $5 billion in federal taxes, $2 billion in state and local taxes. So if we just count out just undocumented or undocumentable immigrants in our communities here in North Carolina, they still pay taxes, by the way. You can't get like a residency status, but you still pay taxes. You get an ITIN number. Undocumented people here in North Carolina, pay $370 million in federal taxes and $260 million in state and local taxes. And that's not even including the buying power that immigrants have in our state. Just on buying power, not even in taxes, buying power, $20 billion here in our state. So it's just a very basic acknowledgement that if we want a financially viable state, which a lot of conservatives are committed to, it would mean that we need to make sure that the immigrants who make our society what it is can live here in safety and be full members of this society that they fund.
Thank you, Isaac, for that. Everything that you said. I want to note a couple things. I'm grateful for you reminding us that this work already is happening. When I ask about what can churches do, well, they can join in the work that's already happening, that churches are already taking part in, that excuse me, immigrant organizations are already leading in. And I love the reminder to embody a posture of listening. I think so often well-meaning communities, well-meaning individuals, myself included, come in to save the day without really listening to the needs of the community. And that is not the way to approach the situation. So I'm so grateful for that reminder to listen and listen well, and to follow the lead of groups on the ground and immigrant communities themselves as we seek to really do justice and love mercy and embody love of neighbor in all of our policy and all of our practices as a faith community. I'm also grateful for what you uplifted around taxes in the state. I think a myth around immigrant communities is that folks don't pay taxes. It is so important that we know the truth and that we're able to combat false information and really help people understand our immigrant siblings and how we can love them well, and that they absolutely deserve, because they are human, to be taken care of, and also they are in fact paying taxes, and that is an important piece that we need to be able to offer to folks when that is when that information is misrepresented and when untruths are offered in arguments. So thank you for that. My last question, Isaac, for you is about voting, and this is a voter forum. So what is the importance of voting on the values of justice and compassion for our immigrant neighbors, particularly in our current political atmosphere, which has been so violently anti-immigrant?
Yeah, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, we are talking about the political landscape and this upcoming election, these elections that are coming in November. And I guess for me, I'm a pastor in a congregation. I'm a Christian. I'm somebody who cares about the Bible as a way of pointing to a way of life that I want to live out with my community. So coming from that perspective, it's just important to remind, or maybe to acknowledge, to remind ourselves, people who care about the Bible, what God says. And what God says in Leviticus 19, in Ezekiel 47, is that the foreigner should be treated as the citizen. I mean, that's what God's law says. You should treat the foreigners among you as if they are citizens. So in Leviticus 17, repeated in Ezekiel 47. And then in Hebrews 13, this wonderful passage which says, don't neglect to welcome strangers, is what most translations say. I studied the Greek back in my seminary days. The word there that's translated as strangers is philoxenos. Philo means love, xenos means foreigner, not stranger, foreigner. So do not neglect to welcome the foreigners. By doing this, some have welcomed messengers of God. So this sense, this posture that Hebrews offers us to say that what it means to welcome foreigners is actually to welcome the very presence of God. If we want to be a people who welcomes God, we can't do that if we don't welcome foreigners among us. So that's how I think about, those are kind of the sensibilities that come to the fore when I think about the kind of politics that I want. This sense of what God wants for us, that's what I take into the election booth with me, voting booth with me, which is these passages, what they outline. I would say one way to think about it is these passages outline what God's law and order is like. This is God's law and order. This God's law is for us to welcome those, to welcome people who are foreigners as if they were citizens. That's what God's law says. Do we want to be people of that law? That's a question for us. And God's order in this world is for a world where all of us belong, where all of us can love each other, where we become our neighbor's keeper, as it says in Genesis, where each of us can become each other's keeper. So what does it mean for us to embody that order that God wants for our lives, where we are each other's keepers?
Thank you, Isaac. I love that. Yes, let's look to God's law and remember that when we welcome foreigners, we are welcoming the presence of God. That is a beautiful, beautiful statement and a truth that I hope we can all hold close to our hearts as we do this work, this election cycle, but as we live every day of our lives. May we really embody that truth. Thank you again. I wanna turn to Nayo now. And Nayo, my first question for you is, what does justice and compassion for immigrant communities mean to you? And what in your life has influenced you to commit yourself to this cause? How is this a moral issue?
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Before I answer that question, I want to just give a quick review of what a refugee is, and also how does that tie with an immigrant that come here as not a refugee, but how those tie on. Then I'll come back with the justice and compassion part of it. So the refugee resettlement, refugees being resettled in the US or anywhere is pretty much their last option. So the resettlement is the last resort when the refugee cannot safely return to their home country and cannot safely remain in the country to which they initially fled from. So, to be considered for a resettlement, a refugee must first receive a refugee status determination by the UNHCR, the United Nations Refugee Agency, by proving they are fleeing persecution based on their race, nationality, religion, political opinion, or social group membership. So fewer than 1% of the world's refugees ever resettle. And if a refugee is selected for resettlement in the US, she or he will then undergo the most extensive security screening and vetting process of any traveler that comes to the United States. So this includes extensive health screening. So this is just to let you know that anyone that comes here as a refugee has been like thoroughly vetted. And we all know that there are narratives out there that says that the refugees are not really vetted. So comparing, for instance, an immigrant, for me, for instance, I came here as an immigrant. And that does not mean that I am different from a refugee. This is where we are. This is the intersection we have in the US. So the refugee, when it comes here, do not have anywhere to go. So this is their home. And we all know what home means. And the home, for me, for instance, is where your heart is. It's where you feel at ease. It's the place that you choose for some, and for others, is what is given to you. And so a refugee and an immigrant like me, we pretty much have the same connection. We're here in Durham, in the US, in any part of the US, and call this place home. So when you call a place home, there's no need or no urge to like not doing the best you can to make that place a good place for you and your kids and the next generation, not only for you, but also for the community. That's where my work comes into play. And as you will remember, Sarah, you read in my bio, my work, I call it a bridge builder. That is what I do. And why do I do that is for people to understand where refugees and immigrants are coming from and why they're here and what are they bringing to this community. So, because if I don't tell you about me, you won't know who I am. And if you don't know who I am, it's gonna be difficult for you to work with me. And if it's difficult for you to work with me, we cannot build the community we are looking for. So for me, justice and compassion all stem from that bridge that we are building. Because you know me and you know where I live, you know what I'm doing, you know what you know me as your neighbor. So knowing me as your neighbor and knowing for sure that at this moment I am not able to influence the policy making or voting, you can do the same. You can do that on my behalf because as a parent, for instance, I have kids that are the same age as your kid that are in schools. So if you're voting for someone who's going to take care of your school, guess what? You're voting for me. Or if you're voting for an elected official that is going to be taking policies that are going to affect your health, that is going to be doing the same thing for me. So your justice, justice and compassion for me is what our behavior or treatment is towards our neighbors and community members.
I'm so grateful for that. I love your emphasis on the importance of story to help us build community with each other, to know each other. When we know each other's stories, we know how to love each other more authentically, and we know how to show up for each other more authentically. So that's a call to me to really build more relationships with the immigrant community in my own neighborhood, in my own part of the state, the refugee communities in my own part of the state, to really get to know my neighbors more deeply so that I love them as my neighbor more deeply. And as you said, also vote with them in mind, vote with love for my neighbor in mind. That's such a beautiful reminder. And thank you also for helping us to really remember what a refugee is, what it means to be a refugee in terms of the legal status of a refugee, and the process of coming to this country as a refugee, which is very taxing. So thank you for that reminder as well. My next question, Nayo, I know that you work with refugee communities, as you just mentioned, and what are the needs of the refugee communities that you interact with in the United States and in this region of the United States, in the Southeast or North Carolina particularly? And how do you strive to meet those needs? How does Church World Service strive to meet those needs?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Our work with the refugee community, I consider that as a holistic approach of how people can integrate communities, and that goes into mentioning or maybe pointing out what you as someone who's born here need first. Because we don't just focus on refugees and immigrants. We focus on the community. And refugees, for instance, like I said, call this community their home. And by doing so, they give back to these communities they are living in. And there are, for instance, since March, with the COVID issues, refugees as well as community members are at the forefront of the fight against the COVID. And if you go to the hospitals in the mornings or nights, or like every shift, you will see people from different backgrounds. Other immigrants, refugees, people born here, or just people that come here to do this work. So this is just to say that the refugees give back to the communities in many ways. And there have been some research by New American Economic, for instance, that point out that around 75,000 refugees are involved in the food supply chain, and 176,000 are working in the healthcare program. So this is just to show you that when you are a refugee, when you are in a community, you do all you can to show people that you belong in this community. You don't have to be born here to show that. Once you call this place your home, you do everything you can. And the need of the refugee community is just for the other community members to see them as human beings, see them as integral part of this community. When I say see them as a human being, I am not trying to say that people consider refugees are not human beings, but there are some narratives out there that as for me, for instance, to be reading that or hearing those on radio news and or read that on some people's blog, people who have the influence to touch a huge swath of the population, to be putting out other narrative that does not equate with what refugees and immigrants are, that is painful sometimes. And our work is trying to show our community what the refugees are. I'm quite sure those on the call today, you have people and you might be maybe walking your dog and you will smell the very delicious cooking that you know has never been part of your what you grow up with. Very different, right? And that is something that the refugee and immigrant community are bringing to the culture that we are bringing. We are building. So to come back to what refugees need in the southeastern region, the United States or North Carolina in particular, is for people to give them the opportunity to prove to the population what they can do. Because some of them fled their country not because they don't do anything, it's just because their opinion is different from those who are in power. And that difference of opinion is one of the greatest values of the American society, right? People come from different opinion to build something new, to build something strong, so that we do not all of us just look in the same direction, right? Things that come from different direction, and refugees and immigrants have that in their background. They used to be outspoken in their countries. They used to be fierce advocate for things that they want to change, and that is the skills that they want to build, to put more on what we are doing in our society. And if to talk about what Church World Service is doing to meet this, that comes to the work I'm doing, providing them with the skills and the tools to be able to advocate, to be able to come to you and to go to elected officials, for instance, and not be fearful of that, and to be able to talk freely, because one of the say in my country is that the whistle is sweeter in the owner's mouth. So if I want to tell you something and I let someone talk on my behalf, that's not going to be as sweet as I would do it myself.
Thank you, Nayo. So many of the things that you said, I always wish these forums were longer. So much of what you said is just so important to note. There is a lot of rhetoric that's deeply dehumanizing towards refugees and immigrant communities, and we have to combat that with love and justice and compassion, and remind everyone that all people are children of God, that they are beautifully, wonderfully made. We have to be strong advocates for our neighbors. And as you said, refugee and immigrant communities are members of our communities, and they make our communities better, more beautiful. They make our food better. They make our communities more beautiful. They make us stronger. And we're so blessed, those of us who know people from different places, to have that diversity of perspective in our lives. So what a beautiful opportunity to be able to advocate for our friends and our neighbors. Thank you for that. My last question, Nayo, is just about the importance of voting. You've already hit on this a little bit, but can you just reiterate, why is it so important that we vote with love for our immigrant siblings in mind?
Yeah, thank you again. Voting, it's very important, not only for our communities, but also for what we believe in. And we at Church World Service cannot really do the work we're doing without the volunteers, the community group and the religious congregation across the U.S. because they always stand in partnership to help with to help refugees of all faiths to find safety and start their life anew. So that being said, we also know that religious communities built the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program. I just want to make sure that everyone knows it. Long before the government was involved in it, religious communities are the one who were doing this work. Why were they doing this work? They were doing this because of their communities, because of their faith, because of what they believe in. They don't really see, oh, you're wearing a red jacket, or I'm wearing blue jacket, or you are in this party, and or I am in this party. So my, what I would say that is on the line is mostly the policies. And as someone working for Church World Service, I cannot tell you to vote for this person or that person. You know who to vote for, but I will say that you have to consider the policies everyone is putting forward. That is the most important thing. As people will go, policies will stay with us for a long time. So for us to vote, we need to see what are the policies and how these policies are making us a better community, are making us better people, are making us live God's will, which everyone knows, take care of your neighbors as you do for yourself. So your neighbor does not have to look the same skin color as you are. Your neighbor can be from anywhere, and as far as they live in your community, they are your neighbor. So voting this year, please join the town halls, ask questions seriously, because we cannot really go face to face and ask these elected officials, what are you doing for my community? But we can join their forums, we can join their town halls, and we can ask them specific questions when it comes to justice and compassion, and when also comes to our environment, for instance, because recently, maybe most of the refugees come from places where there was war. But we have to understand that more people are gonna come, not because of war, but because of policies that we put in place, policies that we don't want to change when it comes to environment. And what are these elected officials that we are going to hire? Yes, we are going to hire them. And we need to know what they're going to do for us. So my suggestion is, please take a look at the policies. If those policies match what you're looking for your community, great. If they're not, please consider someone else that will have those policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Nayo, so much. Yes, remember to look at the policies, be an educated voter, and vote with love in your heart. We're moving now to Amy and Ponkho. And my first question is the question I've asked to all of our speakers. What does justice and compassion for immigrant communities mean to you? And what in your life has influenced you to commit yourself to this cause?
This means equity and means equal rights for everybody, fight for the equal rights. And I was thinking, like, why we are doing this, like, because I look in the mirror and I see myself there. And I look in my community and I see the immigrant community working very hard in the hotels, in the restaurants, cleaning, like doing different things. So it's a lot of injustice going on in this country. So for us, the right thing to do is to be there, at least. And like I say, I think the answer is very simple. The answer is what you are seeing here right now. Like, I can tell you that 2 years ago, my mother was able to have the visa and came to this country. I didn't see my mother for more than 10 years. So I was very happy because the first year that I moved to this country, I saw my father die, so I don't have the option to go and see and be there with the family. So because the reason my mother have the option to have the visa, so she came here to this country, and Amy was there. My mama was teaching her how to make tortillas with corn, with maize. So like you think, like this year, the police stopped my brother in Alana. So Alana have the 287G agreement. So my brother was transferred to a detention center. So we was in very worried about all this stuff. I received a call from the wife of my brother saying that he was detained and he was in detention in one of the detention centers. So they told us like the only way that you can do something right now is if you have $50,000. Is what the lawyer said. So the only stuff that I can think this moment, I say to the wife of my brother, you don't worry about money. We're gonna worry about money. And you worry about the thing that you have to be doing there, talking with the kids and all this stuff. So we ask the community, because we believe and we work all the time in the community. So we ask the community for support. So we raised the $15,000 in one day. So from there we moved to Alana, and we was there in every office eyes, and we went to the different detention centers, and I was there. I can tell you, it's very ugly feeling being outside of this detention center. I was there. You think I don't have documents, and I was there. Or I want to know how it feels, because if I'm gonna talk about it, I need to know how it feels, how it smells, how it tastes to be there, even outside. So we was lucky because we moved very high. I remember one night when he was in one of the detention centers, and later they moved him to a Stewart detention center. So we was there like 11 o'clock, like trying to figure it out, because nobody giving us the information then where he was, and we have to pay the bond, and we need to know where he is and what is the alien number and all this kind of stuff. And Amy said, maybe we have to look in the computer. We have to look in all the information that we can see in the computer. And Amy was typing all this night. And we find that he was moving to a Stewart Detention Center. And the next morning, we wake up 6 in the morning with all the money in our pocket and say, we're gonna go to the ICE office and we're gonna figure it out. We like I was telling you before, we are in fire for justice, and we always have to be in fire for justice. So we wake up this day 6 in the morning, and I can tell you the crazy part of all this is then the kids was behind the car. Like the kids, like you think one is 7 and the other is 12, was behind, and we went to the detention center. We went to the ICE office to pay the bond. And what we saw there, we saw a line of 30 people with the kids, babies in hands, to pay the bond of other people to be liberated from the detention center. This is what we saw. And in front of this detention center, we saw homeless people. So you think these organizations are making millions of dollars, and they are not moving the money to the community. They are right beside in our black communities, and outside of these buildings are homeless. So you think they are very greedy. So my point is then from there we moved, and we was able to take my brother out. So we was very lucky. Only we worked very hard for this to happen. And this is, so when I talk about this, when I share this story, I always say to the people, then this is the power of community, because like the work that we do, we are volunteers in this work. We decide to not receive money because this is not about money. This is about something big than money. This is about community. Then when we have community, we can raise $50,000 in one day. I don't have $15,000. I don't have a bank account, I can tell you. Only I have $15,000 in community. This is what we have. So when we invite people to be involved in all this, we inviting people to become part and be with our immigrant community, because you're gonna eat pupusas, because you're gonna eat tacos, because you're gonna eat food from different parts of the world. Like Kokou was saying, like you're gonna smell these different flavors, then you don't know what it is, only you love it. Because it smells like community, because we learn from the places that we coming from, then we know how to share. Because we don't have a lot, only we know how to share, and we are ready to share. And I can tell you that we walk to all these communities, and everybody tell us when we are in all these distribution centers based in the community, say, can you come and eat it on our table? This is the common in every community. A lot of the people that we met in all this time that have been the pandemic, they never met to share before. Only they said the same thing. Can you come inside my table and eat with us? Why? Because this is the culture that we have, and this is the bigger part of the immigrant community. This then is missing in this country. In this country is miss this idea of community, and we want to have a white fence in front of our house because we don't want nobody inside our house because this belongs to me. This country belongs to me. This is the reason for we are kicking the immigrants out. Even then we are eating in Mexican restaurants. You see people celebrating Cinco de Mayo, drinking. Only we hate the people. We love the tradition. We see people using the African art, having African art in the walls. Only they hate the people. They hate the people. And this is what we are seeing right now in all the stuff that is going on in the country. Only my point is that the answer is what you are seeing right here. If you really want to be in fire like we are, you have to know and have the relationship, because I can tell you then if somebody came from your mother and try to kidnap your mother from the community, you're gonna do something. So make the immigrant community be your mother. Make the immigrant community be your brother, because it's the only way that you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be in fire, going 6 in the morning to the ICE detention center, because you're gonna be in fire, because it's your family. The only way that we have a shot to change something is if we became your family. It's not another way, because we talk a lot with other people in no-profit, and they say, oh, I work from 8 to 5. 5 o'clock, I off my phone. I finish working. We are not like that. We are not like that. And I can tell you then, if my mother called me 5:01, I'm gonna answer the call, because it's not the office time, it's my family time. So we became family. You're gonna answer the call 12 in the night. That's right. And you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be, I have to do something about it. So until we not became family, and this is the thing, like we do a lot of cultural events. People think that it's about the food, it's about community, it's about known to share, and it's about became family. If we became family, like I can tell you, then we have $15,000 right now, because this is community, and it's not about money. It's about to having restaurant collectively have the solutions and be the people. So yeah, the why is because we see the beauty, and I can tell you, because I see in the mirror, I see the beauty of my mother, I see the beauty of my grandparents. So I want to keep these traditions here, because this is who we are. And sometimes this country tries to change our kids, try to make our kids believe that they are Americans, and they have to change because the food that you eat, the language that you speak is wrong. Speaking two languages is wrong. And this is the crazy part. And you think a lot of the work that we do, even then, I do a lot of different art. The biggest piece of art is what we do every day. Right. So, and I remember then, other of the question was voting. I vote every day. Even then I can vote. I vote every day. When I wake up, I vote. When I thinking in something, I'm voting. Like I can tell you that probably 3 years ago, we have the opportunity to make a community garden in the middle of downtown, and in front of the one of the leaders there in the community was elders in our community. So we decided to be involved and make a community garden in the middle of downtown in a grab space. So I vote. In the day of my birthday, I went and I broke a lot of pallets and I make a ramp, because I know there is a lot of people in wheelchairs. So I was thinking, a lot of people in this building have wheelchairs. So if we want to have a very inclusive community garden, we need to make a ramp. And later I started making raised bed for people that are in wheelchairs that be able to have their own plants. I vote every day with my action. When I wake up and I say to my people everywhere in my neighborhood, I say, good morning. I vote, because the next time then they think, then they're gonna vote for somebody that is gonna oppress us. They're gonna say, oh, this is not true. These people are no drug dealers. These people are no people that came to do bad. I know these people. So I vote, because when you vote for me too.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm so deeply convicted by everything you just said, and I don't even know how to really respond to it, aside from you're so right that if we really believed that the immigrants in our neighborhoods were our family, we would show up. And that is on us, and we have failed you. And we have to do so much better. So thank you for that. Thank you for the call to community. And your story about your brother, about raising $50,000 as community, we in community can do that for our friends and our neighbors and the people that we don't know, who we should know, who we need to be in community with, who help make our lives so much more beautiful. So may we do that. May we show up, and may we do it anew, and may we vote every day with our actions. Absolutely. I love what you just said about voting every day with your actions. I know, so friends, we're probably gonna run out of time. I'm just gonna let everybody know, we're aware of that. I wanna continue to ask you, Ponkho and Amy, the questions. And Susannah, my thought is that if we have to send the voter education stuff just in email, you will get it in email. There's lots of links. It'll be fine. So let's go ahead and finish up our questions, Ponkho and Amy. The second question I have, I want to know more about Beloved Asheville. You certainly gave us some information just now about Beloved, but can you tell us a bit more about how you support immigrant communities? I know that the Latinx community has been hit particularly hard by COVID in Buncombe County, and that you have experience working with folks who've been the target of ICE raids, that you show up for those people. So if you could just offer us some information about how Beloved is doing that work in your own communities, that would be wonderful.
What matters how we live every day, and that we live together. And as a person of faith, my faith tells me in Isaiah 58 that I should not turn from my own kin. And the word it uses there is basar, means flesh. So it means that Ponkho's flesh is my flesh, and my flesh is his flesh, that we are that interconnected. And we live in a world that lies to us and tells us that we are not each other's family. So at the heart, and most of our folks will say, Beloved is my family. And that's what I have come to find out, that actually is my soul that is in peril. It's my soul that is in peril. This is work for me as well, because first of all, I'm walking every day in community, and there are policies that contradict my values and what I'm about. I can tell you when ICE came to this community, even though they said they were targeting quote unquote criminals, where they was sitting at school bus stops and at grocery stores and outside health clinics and sitting in people's communities, in their neighborhoods, waiting to take people from their families. We got a call from a woman who had gone out to an appointment, a single mom, and she called us and said, can somebody come pick me up? I'm afraid that I won't be home when my son gets home. And she wasn't talking about being home on time. She was talking about being gone forever. And so when I went to pick her up, she laid down in the back seat of my car so her brown skin would not be seen. Even though they say they don't profile by race, we know they do. She asked me to make one stop on the way home, and that was the library, because she wanted to make sure that the books that she had checked out for her child were returned on time. These are the kind of people that are being terrorized in our community, our own families. I can tell you when we went with our family, Ponkho's brother and his family, and we had children on this journey, on this multiple day journey, morning to night. And when we finally got to the detention center that they tell people is not a prison, full of razor wire and fences, this beautiful young child turns to me and her mom and says, why is my poppy here? My poppy's not a bad person. Why is he here? The damage that we are doing to children. I've been to the borderlands. I was woken up as a mom of twin 6-year-olds, woken up in the middle of the night, many nights, thinking about children in cages, families being separated, and how dare I sleep in my home and kiss my children and sing them lullabies and put them to bed when other children are in cages alone. And I went to the border and I stood with rabbis and other sisters outside of that detention center that we were denied access, even as faith leaders, to do visitation. And we sang lullabies to those children, praying that our voices would somehow carry through those wire fences and those bars and into that detention center. Not a toy in the yard. I was there for multiple days and I never saw a child. They were always inside in cages. This is putting our souls in peril. So what does our faith say? What do my values say? My faith says that God crossed borders to get to me and to bring us together as community. God wants us to eat at each other's tables and love each other's children and learn to make each other's food and cry together and dance together and laugh together. And if one person is struggling, that we go. And so that's what Be Loved is about. We've been responding to COVID. Our Latinx and African American communities have been hard hit here. We know many, many people that are sick, that are losing loved ones, that didn't have the information, that haven't worked for months, that don't have access to any of the formal supports that the federal government is giving, not much. When we look at the supports going to big profit-making companies. And it's, as Ponkho said, when we stood outside the ICE office in a Black neighborhood, bringing all the money that we could raise from just community members, $1, $5, and brought that together, we saw neighborhoods boarded up, people out of work, people literally sleeping all around the ICE office, homeless. And so we know that all of these things are connected, right? That if we begin to live from our hearts and we begin to find one another as family, we will do the right thing by each other and we will all thrive. I have never had a more beautiful life because I have been brought into the family. So it's about all of us. It's about how we live our lives. And I hope and pray that we all want to come into the beloved community. So we're doing rapid response. We started 3 years ago during an ICE raid, responding to thousands of families, getting Know Your Rights information out, going out in the midst of a pandemic. And this is what we do. This is how we stand together. And this is how we vote every day. And I can tell you, when I go in that voting booth, what I will carry with me is the votes that I've been voting every day and all the people that are in my life. And what kind of future I believe that we can have together. Because when we're out in the community, we see the beautiful future coming about by the way that we're living together with one another. Want to say something else?
Thank you, Amy and Ponkho. I love your reminder, Amy, and your note, particularly to white folks and to people who have the privilege of speaking with accents that do not other them in spaces in which they would be othered. This is putting our souls in peril. We are dying through our lack of action and our lack of love and our lack of showing up. So as you said, God crossed borders to get to us. I love that. And may we also cross borders to get to the embodiment of God. My own faith, I see Jesus certainly as the othered, the marginalized, and I think Jesus is in the cages right now. Yep. And I need to show up with Jesus and with my family. So thank you for that call to justice. May we all vote with all of the votes that we've been casting every day in our hearts, and may we start casting more of those votes each and every day with actions that do not offer excuses to why we aren't showing up for our family, for our siblings. I'm so grateful for each of you. This was a deeply powerful event. And friends, everybody who's attending, please get to know these people and their organizations, get to know Be Loved Asheville, get to know Church World Service, talk to your congregations about supporting these groups, and keep showing up to these conversations, but also to the actions that make all of this love real in the world. We have to treat each other as family. With that, know that you will get an email with a lot of stuff in it, and it's going to be wonderful, and including a recording of this conversation. And I'm going to ask Reverend Isaac if he would close us in prayer.
Let's pray. God, we live by your grace. You made this world through your grace, this planet, this land, all of it by your grace. You made us, each of us, through your grace, as signs of your grace in this world, to be a blessing, to be our neighbor's keeper, to become kin together. Grant us the wisdom and strength and courage to be people of your grace, to extend to each other the same hospitality you have extended to us. You are the host, O God, and we are your guests. May we honor you in our hearts, in our lives, and in our politics. Amen.
Amen, everyone. Please go in peace throughout your day and go convicted to do justice. I hope that you have a beautiful day. Thank you again to our speakers. Thank you, Kokou, Nayo. Thank you, Ponkho and Amy. And thank you, Isaac, for all of your good work, for who you are in this world. It's really an honor to learn from you. Thank you.